Good afternoon. This is Janet McElligott in Los Angeles. One of the interesting things about dealing with Sudan is how your enemy comes after you. And sometimes they use someone who was your friend. Today, Abdurrahman Al-Amin wrote this crazy piece about how I've made millions of dollars and owned a house in Georgetown thanks to working for the Sudanese. So I wanted to explain to people why I care, because that's really at issue here. My first trip to the Sudan was very unexpected. I was a China expert in Washington. I happened to meet the Sudanese ambassador to the United States at the Chinese embassy, and I really thought all I was going to do was pass messages back and forth to help free Red Cross hostages. But what happened was this. I ended up flying into Sudan and going into a place called Gogrial. And I got into a fight with the rebel commander for the SPLM, or the deputy, I should say. His name was Faustino Atem. And I ended up staying behind so the Red Cross could come home. We were the 12th negotiating team that went in. And here's the letter from the US congressman thanking me for that. When I came back to Washington, I didn't expect to work for the Sudanese, but they hired me. And they did so because Calvin Humphreys, who was on the House Intelligence Committee, asked me about Ben Laden. And I was going to bring an art exhibit to the United States. I thought Ben Laden was Benjamin Laden, and he was some poor, unfortunate Jew the National Islamic Front wrongly imprisoned. Turned out he wasn't Jewish at all. He was Osama bin Laden. And so I began passing messages back and forth between Sudanese intelligence and the FBI. A lot of this is outlined in a book called Losing Bin Laden by Richard Miniter. Vanity Fair did a piece called The Secret Osama Files. And in 1998, when two Afghan Arabs got on Kenya Airways Flight 322 transiting through Khartoum on their way to Karachi, they were picked up by Sudanese intelligence, a man named Hasibella, and they called me and said, "We have something for the Americans." Instead of the United States government taking what the Sudanese were offering, which were Osama bin Laden's bankers, they bombed Al Shifa Pharmaceutical. Now, let me show you a few things. This entire box is filled. Oh, it's heavy. I kept everything, okay? Everything. I have 5 boxes like this of documentation. And the documentation is what the Sudanese government tried to do to help the United States. The United States failed in their effort. And when we bombed Al Shifa Pharmaceutical, I took NBC News in because I had been given a cease and desist letter by the Office of Foreign Asset Control and threatened with arrest by the State Department. Because had this information come out during the Clinton impeachment hearings, I believe President Clinton would have been impeached and it would have been President Gore running for re-election. So when I came back to the United States, there was a US reporter named Seymour Hersh, and Seymour came to my house in DC and told me I was on a to-kill list, and that's when I fled for Kazakhstan, where I lived until after the impeachment hearings were over. And then I found out about all of bin Laden's networks and went back and forth in earnest. But it wasn't the Sudanese government who paid me, as Abdurrahman Al-Amin alleges. It was a philanthropist in Virginia named Maggie Bryant, and I worked with her son, Kerry Crane, at Locust Hill Farms, because Maggie believed the United States shouldn't be blind. She believed that the work I was doing was important. So I didn't pay for my home in Washington with ill-gotten goods. I paid for it through an NGO. That's how I was able to live. And I faced a lot of discrimination because I was a Catholic. Why did I care about these Muslims? Why did I care about what was going on? And what I saw was a lot of humanity. So if I'm upset because of what I see going on now in Darfur, it's because When I worked with the Small Arms and Light Weapons Committee of the UN, that's who I worked for 6 years. They paid my bills. Everybody has to find a way to pay their bills. And I worked on demobilization. I saw the hardships that the Sudanese endured. I saw what war did to people. When the Prime Minister of Egypt grounded my plane and used me to avert an assassination attempt of an Arab president, I did these things because I believed it was the right thing to do. Because if you know anything about the Irish, and I'm Irish American, we are raised from the minute we understand anything to stand up for people who don't have a voice. We are raised to fight for the voiceless. I am doing what I was raised to do. I am doing what I was taught to do. And that is, when someone doesn't have a voice, speak on their behalf if they let you. And if you think, Abdurrahman, or anyone else who goes after me, that your words will hurt me, the truth will set you free. And maybe the courts will shut you up, because this is slander. To post pictures of a house I owned, to put in information that is patently false, that's illegal. And if you don't have U.S. citizenship, you can be exported from the United States. And you're someone who's been at my house in D.C. You're someone who ate at my table. You wanted me to marry your cousin, Amin Hasab al-Rasul. You know Amin and I were great friends. He was happy when he died. He passed away a couple of years ago, and he has a child in Uganda and married a beautiful woman named Betty. Amin and I were friends for 25 years. Why would you go after someone who was close to your family? And who's paying you? Because they may have to pay your court costs. I've kept everything. Look at these letters. How about the letters from the U.S. government thanking me for what I've done for my country? Come at it, boys, but don't go after someone personally. You know they've lost if that's all they can do. Thank you.